What drives someone to willingly consume human flesh? I mean, sure, there are cases of people resorting to cannibalism out of hunger and desperation. We've all probably heard the story of the Donner Party. But that's not the kind of drive I'm referring to. Just picture someone who seems happy, healthy, and all around well adjusted. They're not lacking for money, food, security, or community, but they still have this intense, gnawing, inescapable desire to consume human flesh. Most people can never hope to understand something like that. Most people don't even want to think about it. But well, I'm not most people. And believe me, this is not something I wanted to understand or even think about. But that all changed a couple weeks ago when I found myself in a situation where, actually, no, that's a lie. I have to resist lying for once because the truth is, the real, honest truth is that I put myself in a very peculiar situation. One that brought me face to face with a special kind of cannibal. I know, special seems like an oddly ironic term to associate with a cannibal. But trust me, it's very appropriate. And since I don't know if I'll get another chance to tell my story, I need to put this out there. But to tell that story, I'll need to be honest and genuine. Something that has never really come easy for me. You see, I am not what you would call a sympathetic character. I'm a con man, plain and simple. And my father was a con man too, albeit not a very good one. He actually ended up getting caught and eventually died in prison. As for my mother, well, I honestly don't know where she is. All I do know is that she got involved with the drug trade when I was 7 years old after she got fired from a bank for committing wire fraud. She must not have been very good at that either, because she disappeared just a few years later. So yeah, I didn't come from a very upstanding family. I've been influenced by crime, deviance, and whatnot all my life. But that is not an excuse. I understand that now, even though I tried not to until very recently. I really didn't even have to become a con man. Even after my dad went to jail, my godparents looked after me. They tried to help me. They even tried to guide me towards a more virtuous life. And yet, I still chose otherwise. I really did have a lot of opportunities to not follow in my parents' footsteps. But I ignored every single one of them. And that makes all the crap I did so much worse. Because it's one thing to become a criminal out of desperation. Those who willingly and eagerly pursue a life of crime, fraud, and deviance, make no mistake, those people are truly irredeemably deplorable. And having said that, I guess I fit into that category all too well. I couldn't possibly list all the crimes I've committed over the course of my life. Hell, I'd be here till next Christmas if I tried. I'll just say that I've done some pretty awful things, and I've done most of them without a shred of remorse. Just think of any fraud, grift, racket, or exploit. Chances are I've dabbled in all of it. I defrauded the elderly out of their life savings with investment schemes. I swindled single mothers, veterans, and honest, hardworking people out of their money, usually through fake charities or an insurance fraud. I didn't shy away from violence either. I've never been afraid to bully, brutalize, or intimidate people. I didn't usually get my hands dirty. Most of the time, I paid people much stronger than me to take care of that. Some might argue that makes what I did even worse, and I honestly don't disagree with it. Now, I could go on and on about my life of crime, but I hope I've gotten my point across. I am just not a good guy. I don't think I ever have been. I've spent my entire life lying, cheating, and making excuses. I just never thought it would catch up to me like this. And by that, I don't mean the cops or the feds. No con man succeeds for very long without keeping them in mind. What I didn't imagine, what no sane person could have imagined, was how my misdeeds would have put me in the crosshairs of a goddamn cannibal. How that happened? Hell, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I've only been able to uncover so much, and what I have learned, I genuinely wish I could unlearn. Because by fluke or fate, I became a target the second I entered a cozy little enclave called Huntwood. Now, if you've never heard of it, that's actually by design. Huntwood is one of those isolated upper middle class communities that you'd never know about unless you were a certain kind of individual. And for someone like me, a shameless con man, I had to know about it. You see, decades ago, the mafia bought up and developed this sleepy little town. And it was basically turned into this cozy, affluent retreat where criminals could enjoy some peace and quiet while also enjoying the fruits of their ill-gotten gains. Throw a stone in any direction, and chances are it'll land on the property of someone who made their living through murder, fraud, theft, or extortion. But even after the mobsters died or went to prison, Huntwood remained a popular place for criminals to hide. That's why I went there. As it just so happens, I'd attracted a lot more heat than usual for my latest con. I won't go into details. I'll just say it involved extorting churches with fake lawsuits. And with this particular scheme, I'd ruined a lot more lives and reputations than usual. Even after I got away with the money, I needed to lie low until the heat died down. So I rented a nice apartment in Huntwood and just laid low. And at first, I loved it. The people in this town didn't ask a lot of questions. They were also absurdly friendly, and not just in that small town America sort of way. I'm not sure if they knew that this place was founded and populated by criminals, but nobody seemed to care, and I didn't either. For the first couple of weeks I was there, Huntwood was great. Being there was like being on vacation. I'd even steal, cheat, rob, or con anyone, which counts as an accomplishment for a guy like me. But to be fair, I was still planning my next scheme. But it matters that I didn't do anything while I was staying there in that town. It matters a lot. Because you see, on this one muggy night, I'm out at a sports bar enjoying some overpriced whiskey while watching a ball game. It's past 11 p.m., so there aren't many people there. I'm also a bit tipsy, so I'm getting ready to leave. But then, this guy comes stumbling in from the back near the bathrooms, and he looks like hell, and not in the typical drunk at a bar sort of way. He's pale as a ghost, covered in sweat, and clutching his right arm like it's broken. He's also wearing this distinct blue jacket, the kind that looks like it came from some overpriced boutique in Beverly Hills. It is not the kind of thing you'd expect people to wear in a place like this. While I am curious, I avoid eye contact, assuming this is not something I want to get involved with. Thankfully, the guy ignores me. He just stumbles towards the bartender, who happens to be this grizzled old guy who is casually washing used mugs. "Please, you have to help me. There's this crazy guy after me. I think he's hunting me or something." The man comes off as not completely sober, but he doesn't sound crazy either. That does concern me. But the bartender, he doesn't take it seriously at all. He just laughs it off, tells him he's had too much to drink, and encourages him to go home. But the man in the jacket does not calm down. He even reaches over the bar and grabs the man by the collar. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but he sounded on the brink of tears, begging him for help of any kind. But the bartender just keeps shaking his head and laughs. And with this eerie sense of calm, pushes the man away, pats him on the shoulder, and tells him to go home. He even starts humming to himself as he goes back to cleaning the bar. The man in the jacket cusses him out loudly, but the bartender just waves him off. And at that point, the man in the jacket whimpers like a wounded animal. From where I was sitting, I could tell he was more hurt than he let on. I even got a glimpse of his arm. It was definitely broken and bleeding. Somebody had roughed him up. Somebody strong, capable, and plenty willing to break bones. That just made me avoid eye contact even more. The man in the jacket stumbled around anxiously for a bit, but nobody there wanted to get involved. So he just ran out of the bar as fast as his leg could take him. And after that, he disappeared. I never saw him again. Hell, I doubt anyone saw him after that. How do I know this? Well, I'll get to that soon enough. I just have to warn you, this is a good time to walk away if you just finished eating your lunch. After that little incident, I left the bar as fast as I could. I am all too eager to forget about what I saw. But the very next morning, a story comes across my newsfeed that makes this incredibly difficult. The FBI had just added a new name to their top 10 most wanted list. It was a man suspected of extortion, racketeering, and over 3 dozen assaults. And he was last seen in an area not too far from Huntwood, an area I'd actually passed through on my way here. But what disturbed me even more was the picture. It was the same guy from the bar, messy hair and misshapen teeth and all. That concerned me. Not because of the incident, but because I was suddenly worried that Huntwood might be crawling with feds. So I started making plans to leave. But there was still a lot of heat on me. I really couldn't risk making myself visible just yet. I planned on laying extra low for the rest of my time there. But on that same afternoon, I'm out getting some food at a convenience store. And at the same time, there happens to be this farmer's market operating across the street. It attracted a sizable crowd. Everyone there seemed happy and cheerful. Nothing seemed amiss at all. But then, I see this woman, who is clearly not from around here, running around like her hair was on fire. She looked paralyzed by fear, more so than the guy at the bar from the previous night. She's also noticeably limping, like her right leg was badly injured. She starts randomly running up to people and begs for help. I couldn't make out anything she was saying, but she looked like she was on the brink of tears. But everyone she encounters, they want nothing to do with her. Some even laugh at her, just like the bartender did. But that only made her more desperate. At one point, she looked over towards me, and I saw her face. I saw right into her eyes. And I don't doubt for a second that her fear was real. Now, I might be a con man and a sociopath, but I know better than most when someone is faking it. And this woman, she was not faking it. I still averted my eyes, and she just cussed loudly and kept running. Later on, I found out that this woman had helped organize human trafficking rings. You know all those stories about people being smuggled over the border, forced to work in fields or in brothels? She facilitated that sort of thing and made lots of money from it. That day in Huntwood was likely the last time anyone saw her alive in broad daylight. But even before I knew that, I started feeling very, very vulnerable. One incident was a fluke. Twice, that was the start of something. I knew right then and there that I had to step up my timetable. I had to get out of Huntwood and fast. So I start making preparations. I don't even plan on staying the night. But fate really seemed to turn against me because the weather went to shit that afternoon. A storm had just rolled in and several roads had closed, including the one I took to get into Huntwood. But that wouldn't stop me. I already had an alternate route planned. I even had a destination in mind. If I could get there, I could wait all this out. But I never made it. Everything I'd planned, every contingency I'd set up, none of it amounted to anything. I didn't know it at the time, but it was already too late for me. I still tried to escape. I terminated my lease on the apartment, I packed my car, and I drove through the pouring rain towards the nearest highway. But I didn't even make it out of Huntwood. Because on the last light near the city limits, right at this crossroad located near some train tracks, my car stalled out. And no, it was not random either, but I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was that I started panicking like hell, because the last thing I wanted was to be stuck in Huntwood for another night. And that's when this big white box truck pulled up next to me. And on the side, it had this weird logo of a pig and the name of a local butcher shop, Huntwood Fresh Meats. That didn't worry me at first. Then the truck stops and the driver walks out. And the next thing I know, there's this tall, heavy-set man in a poncho approaching my window. He smiles and waves, not at all bothered by the storm. He then taps on my window, and me, being an idiot and in a total panic, I roll it down to greet him.
Heck of a time and place to break down. Need some help, partner?
He sounded friendly enough, just like everyone else in Huntwood. I don't entirely remember what I said to him. Me being a con man, it's hard to keep up with all the lies. I just tried as hard as I could to make him go away. Initially, I tried being nice. Then I tried being not so nice. But this man, this big, intimidating man, just kept standing there, this weird grin on his face, as though he knows I'm lying and wants to see just how far I'll take it. I start getting annoyed and even a little angry. I'm just about ready to threaten this guy, but then I noticed the jacket he's wearing under the poncho. It was the same jacket that the guy from the bar had been wearing. I know it was his because I saw the bloodstains on the same area he'd been clutching his arm. And as soon as I saw that, I knew then and there that I was in trouble and I had to get away. I ran out through the other door of my car, but the strange man was surprisingly fast for his size. And keep in mind, it is pouring rain, and I do not know this place very well. This man, however, clearly does, because he doesn't panic for a second. And at one point, I swear I heard him say,
Ha! I love it when they run. Makes them taste even better.
What happened after that is kind of a blur. I remember slipping and falling into a pile of mud. I think I hit my head and became disoriented. And when the man caught me, I couldn't put up much of a struggle. I did have a gun on hand, but I didn't even get a chance to pull it. Because once that man had me in his grasp, everything went dark. I do have vague memories of being tossed into the back of a truck, riding through downtown Huntwood, and even hearing the man sing along to some classic rock on the radio. Somewhere along the way, I black out, and by the time I wake up, I find myself in the nightmare of all nightmares. The first thing I noticed was that I'm strung up like an animal. My wrists and ankles are bound with rusty chains, and I can already feel them bruising my skin. The next thing I notice is that I'm naked, totally bare-ass naked. I try to scream in horror, only to find out that I've been gagged. It's also freezing cold, way more than it was outside. And finally, when my vision clears, I realize I'm in some sort of meat locker. But the meat being stored there, they were not your standard farm animals. I look to my left. I see this row of bodies. Well, what was left of them anyway. Yeah, you know that look of a Thanksgiving turkey after all the meat has been plucked from it? Well, picture that, but with humans. Fully grown humans. I almost passed out and threw up at the same time. But then I made the mistake of looking to my right. And I saw even more bodies, but these were a lot more fresh. Remember that guy from the bar? Well, he was there partially. Every last bit of muscle from the neck down, it had been carved off bit by bit. And it wasn't sloppy either. Whoever did this, they were careful and slow. I know because the look on his face was frozen. Eyes wide open with terror, mouth hung open as if he were still screaming. I thought I knew horror before. Being a lifelong criminal, you cross paths with some pretty sick people. But this was on another level. Oh, and remember that woman from earlier that day? She was there too. Bound, gagged, strung up, and every bit as naked as I was. But she too had been carved up, just not as much. She still had plenty of flesh on her body to let you know that she was human. But the parts that had been cut off, you knew there was no going back for her. And if that weren't bad enough, I think she might have still been conscious. I couldn't tell. I'm not even sure I want to know. But that didn't matter in the end. Because the big guy from the truck, he finally showed up. He was still wearing the other guy's jacket, humming to himself with a goddamn smile. He had this big, shiny meat cleaver in one hand and an overstuffed meaty sandwich in the other. And by the time he walked up to me and the woman, he'd wolfed down the last piece. I only got a brief glimpse of it, but I already knew what kind of meat was in that sandwich. Initially, he just looked at me and grinned, like he found my horrifying look amusing. Then he turned his attention to the woman, not seeming to care whether or not she was still alive. I tried not to look at what he was doing, but the man, he just had to be so damn friendly.
Don't get too comfy, partner. I'll get to you in a sec. But while you're waiting, let me tell you a little story. Years ago, this kind, happy couple wanted to have a baby. But the woman had some medical problems, and the doctor said she might never conceive. They still try as best they can, but when medicine failed them, well, they turned to something else.
He sounded so casual, as though he'd told this story to everyone he'd captured. And as he's telling it, he slides the blade across the neck of the woman and starts cutting off the last bits of flesh from her torso. I almost throw up into my gag. I make a bunch of noises and start fighting my chains. But the man just keeps talking.
So the couple then visits this voodoo fella, the kind who says he can do more than just pray for them. He conducts this fancy ritual for them, says it'll help them conceive. But doing so means making deals with some less than holy forces, so to speak. They know the risks, they know the implications, but they still do it. And wouldn't you know it, it worked. 1 month later, the woman is pregnant, and 9 months after that, a healthy baby boy is born.
The man then flashed me this beaming, disturbing grin. He then finished carving off the rest of the woman and starts packing it in these bags. He even whistles while he does it. I'm still struggling, but the man doesn't seem the least bit bothered.
By all accounts, the boy grows up normal. He's a big boy too, has a hell of an appetite. But his mama don't mind feeding him. Then one day, he's hanging out after church and he's feeling really hungry. That's when he smells it for the first time. This unique, distinct aroma. Just imagine a buffet of your favorite food and multiply that by 100. Problem is, it ain't coming from some already cooked meal. It's coming from someone, a very specific someone.
He seals up the package and turns back to what's left of the woman. He stares at her for a moment, but just keeps grinning. I can only watch in disgust as he smells the air around him and the man who once hung next to her. It was almost like he was smelling a freshly cooked meal.
You see, this boy's church had a bit of a problem. The priest who'd been running the joint wasn't supposed to be there. After preying on little boys and little girls at another church on the coast, he should have been in hell, or at least in jail. But nope, the fella fled to Huntwood. There, he thought he could hide from all his crimes and keep preying on little kids. He did a dang good job of hiding it, but the hungry boy, he knew. He could smell the priest's crimes and even his total lack of remorse for it all. And it smelled delicious.
He continued inhaling this scent, as he called it. The woman and man next to me, they must have been every bit as bad as that priest. And knowing my rap sheet and my utter lack of remorse, I can only imagine how great I must have smelled.
That priest eventually found himself on the wrong end of a butcher's knife. Because on that day, the boy learned what them less than holy forces did, or tried to do. That voodoo priest had warned the couple that if they weren't truly pure in soul, them forces would corrupt their precious baby in ways too awful for words. But, as it turns out, they were pure. They were loving. And even when those forces tried to corrupt the boy, all that did was give him a very special appetite for a special kind of meat.
He finally turned towards me. I am shivering. I am trembling. I am so paralyzed by disgust and fear that I start going mad. I struggle and flail about in my chains, but the man just shakes his head and laughs.
Whatever those unholy spirits did to that boy, they still created a hungry, determined monster. Only that monster only eats other monsters. And since most people are good people, never doing enough bad to make them appetizing, they're totally safe. Even if they know the boy, they don't fear the monster, because they know how he picks his prey.
He then turns around, grabs the cleaver he'd been using earlier, and cleans it. He makes sure that I can see him wash the blood off the blade. He also makes sure I watch as he sharpens it. I fight even harder to get out of my restraints. I even feel the rusty chains start to creak. But they still don't break.
You like that story? It's still my favorite. It always spoke to me. I thought I was the only one who knew how good folks like you taste. You can hide who you are from everyone, lying, cheating, stealing, and hurting everyone in your path. But you can't change what it does to you. Just be glad that my daddy and granddaddy taught me well. I know how to cook, cut, and cure my meat right. Gotta warn you though, it's a slow and tedious process. But trust me, you can taste the difference.
When I heard those words, I knew my time was almost up. It was now or never. If I didn't escape, this guy was going to put that cleaver to good use. Whatever strength I had left, I summoned it and then some. The man is still checking his blade, making sure it's clean and sharp. Then, just as he's holding it up to the light, I hear it. The rusty chain around my wrist breaks. It was the sweetest noise I'd ever heard. Next thing I know, my wrists are free and I fall to the floor. A floor that's still soaked with blood and human entrails, mind you. The guy ends up turning around just in time to see me undo the shackles around my ankles. And for the first time, I see him get angry. He's not enraged yet, but he is angry. And very hungry if his demeanor were any indication. But I try not to focus on that. I try not to focus on how cold I am, how numb or shriveled certain parts of my body are. As soon as I felt solid ground under me, I ran. I ran faster than I thought it was possible to run. I managed to get out of the meat locker. I even managed to find an exit. I just dashed into the pouring rain, still naked and freezing cold. Everything after that gets kind of blurry. Desperation, adrenaline, and fear do some strange things to your mind. But I'm not out of the woods yet. You see, as I record this, I am still stuck in Huntwood, and my time is running out. I'll skip the part where I explain how I found clean clothes, how I found a working computer, or how I plan to get the hell out of here with my flesh still intact. There's a lot I still need to figure out. So I'm putting this out there in case I don't make it, knowing full well that the odds are not in my favor. I am a criminal and a con man, a liar and a thief. I have no friends, family, or allies to turn to. It's far too late to take back all the horrible things I've done. But this man, this Huntwood Cannibal, he now has my scent. He has a taste for people like me. I need to start moving again. But before I go, there's one other thing I heard him say as I ran away. Something that others need to know before they find out the hard way.
Ha! Run all you want. I've got your scent. I will find you. We're both monsters, you and me. But you're just desperate and afraid. And I am hungry. Very, very hungry.